Neural control and coordination. First of all, we talk about the neural system. Neural system in animals. See, when we say neural system in animals, it provides an organized network. Organized network of point-to-point connections. Clear? What for? For quick coordination. How is it achieved in different organisms? Then we talk about sponges. First is in sponges like poriferans. This is an example of porifera, phylum porifera. They do not have neurons, means no neurons. Then talking about hydra. It's a coelenterate. Over there, neurons are there, but that forms a network, a kind of network. Like these form a nerve network structure, a mesh-like structure where the exchange of or coordination of nerves take place in the entire body. This is seen in hydra. That means network, nerve network. Then we talk about earthworm. In earthworm, this nervous system, it consists of a single ventral nerve cord and a paired ganglia. If this is the body of the earthworm, then ventral nerve cord and paired ganglia, youthate ganglia, two lobular structures. S. These are ganglia and segmental nerves from the ganglia. Means each ganglia will arise a pair of nerve which is reaching the other body parts in the entire ventral side. So we write it is present on ventral side and nervous system consists of nerve cord plus paired ganglia and segmental nerves. Clear? Which arise from the segmental ganglia. Then insects, they show a little better organization compared to all three. With a brain, they have a brain, double ventral nerve cord, ganglia and nerves. Okay, this brain is not well developed brain. It is something we call that the superior most ganglia are known as the supraesophageal ganglions, which can easily process the information. So over there we said double ventral cord. So in their body, this is the double ventral cord which runs, and they have paired ganglia, and these paired ganglia or these many brains, these process the information through these segmented nerves to the parts of the body. This is the arrangement of neurons or the structure of neuron if present in the lower organisms. Moving to vertebrates. Vertebrates have a very well developed brain, and in case of vertebrates we say first of all the human nervous system. Vertebrates, they have a well developed brain. So under this we are going to discuss human nervous system. In this system we say divided into CNS, central nervous system, which further comprises of brain and spinal cord. Then is PNS, peripheral nervous system. Clear? Consists of nerves which are associated with the CNS network, and the nerve fibers of PNS are of two types, afferent and efferent. Afferent transmit the impulse from organs, that is from tissues or organs, to the CNS. That is afferent. Efferent, it transmits the impulse from CNS, that is the central nervous system, to the various tissues or the body organs. This PNS, it further has three divisions, and when we talk about the divisions, we say PNS can show somatic. Somatic we also call voluntary. Voluntary nervous system, autonomic nervous system, and the visceral nervous system. Okay. Now coming to what all these somatic or voluntary meant for, autonomic and visceral meant for. First of all, somatic. Somatic nervous system, where the voluntary nervous system sends impulse from the CNS to skeletal muscles. Alright, where the nervous system sends impulse from CNS to the skeletal muscles. Then, autonomic nervous system. Here, the involuntary nervous system sends impulse from CNS to the visceral organs, involuntary or the visceral organs of the body. Along with that, smooth muscles of the body. Okay? And when it reaches the smooth muscles, it further is controlled by two pair of nerves. We are quite familiar with that. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves. These two systems and the nerves, they act antagonistic to each other. Means if one is stimulatory in action, the other one is inhibitory in action. Alright, if one believes in doing contraction, the other one relaxation. This is how they control the activities of all the smooth muscles of the body. Then moving to the third one, visceral nervous system. When we say visceral nervous system, it is a part of peripheral nervous system that includes the entire complex of nerves. Means the nerves, the ganglia, nerve fiber, nerve plexus, through which impulses travel. Alright? It controls all of them. And how does the impulse travel? Impulse travels from CNS to viscera, and from viscera to CNS. It is, you can say, this way as well. But when this conduction takes place, it takes place through nerves, through ganglia, through fibers and through plexus. This is how the three parts of PNS are described. Now moving to, we have talked about special cells, neurons or the nerve cells. What do they look like? What is the structure? And how do they act in transmitting the messages? Neuron. Other name, nerve cell. Unit of nervous system. Specialized cells can detect, receive, transmit different kinds of stimuli. What is stimuli? Stimuli is an internal or internal response to which our body reacts. Now, neurons are also known as the structural and functional unit of nervous system. As we say, alveoli for the breathing system, and definitely for lungs, which will help in carrying out the entire processing of lungs. Same way, this entire processing of nervous system is conducted by neurons. These are of three types. We are not talking about sensory motor here. We are talking about the number of axons and dendrites. On the basis of the presence of number of axon and dendrite, we convert and we divide them into unipolar, where one axon is found. Okay, one axon when dendrite hota hai isme. Then we talk about bipolar. Bipolar, as the name suggests, with one axon and one dendrite. One axon, one dendrite. This one is common in embryonic stage. And this one is seen or found in the retina of the eye throughout. इसमें dendrite ज़रूरी नहीं है हो, इसमें axon होना ज़रूरी है. Alright, bipolar के अंदर एक axon और एक dendrite condition है. That's why it's in the retina of the eye. Multipolar, the third one, which means one axon and number of dendrites. Where is it found? In the cerebral cortex. Why? Where the processing of messages takes place. Cerebral cortex region of the brain. Clear? Now, we are going to discuss the structure of a multipolar neuron. That how does this multipolar neuron looks like? We are quite familiar with this shaped structure, right? And we draw dendrites also, the cytoplasmic processes. ये बनाते हैं हम. सेंटर में हम निसल ग्रैन्यूल एंड सेल बॉडी बनाते हैं. Then we process, we extend one of the dendrite as the long axon and terminates into knob-like structures known as synaptic knobs or the nerve ending. Now, it has a cell body, dendrons or dendrites, and an axon. Cell body has cytoplasm, Nissel granule, typical nucleus is also present. You can see I have made it bigger one. Alright, and certain granular bodies around it. And these granular bodies are known as Nissel, Nissl, Nissel's granule. It's a characteristic feature of it. Okay, these are the Nissel granules, and this one is the cytoplasm, and this inner one is the nucleus. This region is cell body. Other name, cyton. Clear? Then we say number of processes or outgrowths are there. Then these outgrowths are known as dendrites. Clear? Axon fiber arises from the cell body and is branched at the distal end. Each branch terminates into a knob-like structure called the synaptic knob. It contains synaptic vesicle with a neurotransmitter which will help in transmission of the messages. Okay, so here this area, this long tubular one, is known as the axon, which is enclosed by a myelin sheath. Why? So that the message remains protected, which is not at all destroyed. And in between the myelin sheath, there are special cells which are known as Schwann cells. Schwann cells in the myelin sheath. Fine. This is the axon terminal, right? And these are the synaptic knobs. So this part, and third, this part. These are the three parts: cyton, axon, and the nerve endings. Now we will quickly write about it. Oh, what is the basic structure of a neuron looks like? We say each neuron has number one, cell body. Cell body contains cytoplasm, which has nucleus and Nissel's granule, and along with long processes which we call dendrites or dendrons. These are the outgrowths. Number two, we say axon. Axon has myelin sheath around it, okay, and this what is the purpose of this axon? It transmits the impulse away from the cell body, right? And dendrites, they conduct the impulse to the cell body. Axon transmits the impulse away from the cell body. These are of two types, axons, on the basis of the branch. If the myelin sheath is present, then we call it myelinated. And if it is not there, we call it non-myelinated ones. Alright. So, the myelinated ones are enveloped with Schwann cells which form a myelin sheath around the axon, and they have a characteristic Schwann cell sheath structure. It is not a continuous one. And wherever the gaps are left, we call it nodes of Renville. You might have seen while making this, I left a gap in between. इसको बोलते हैं node of Renville, from where a new branch arises. Clear? Myelin sheath is present, but where it is not present, from there the node arises. Where are these myelinated ones found? These are found in the cranial area. Cranial, that means the brain, and the spinal nerves. These are specialized for it. While non-myelinated ones, they are found commonly in autonomic and somatic nervous system. Okay, it is normally in autonomic nervous system and somatic one. So this one is particularly in the cranial and the spinal nerves. Why? Because the transmission of messages, when taking place, it needs complete care that the message may not leak, and if required, there are nodes of Renville so that more branches can arise. Okay, and end is with the synaptic knob. Synaptic knob means which contains a synaptic vesicle and a neurotransmitter in it. What is this neurotransmitter doing? This neurotransmitter is acetyl coenzyme A. This acetyl coenzyme is basically responsible for the transmission of message in the chemical form. Throughout, the message is traveling in the electrical form. Here it is traveling in the chemical form when there is a gap between the synaptic knob and the dendrite. If there is no gap, then need not of releasing any chemical, message can easily transmit. Okay, now moving to a very important topic, how the message gets transmitted. Means there is always generation and conduction of nerve impulse. Transmission यहाँ होती है. Transmission is a different part. But how this impulse is generated and conducted through the nerve impulse. Basically how the neurons will act. when this impulse reaches. So this is generation and conduction of nerve impulse. Fine. In this, पहली चीज़ जो हमें पता होनी चाहिए, that is neurons are excitable. Why? Because their membrane are in a polarized state. That is, polarized state क्या होता है? Where exists a potential difference. Why? Because the transmission of ions takes place, तो potential difference generate हो जाता है. Okay? And इसी चीज़ को हम बोलते हैं polarized state. And दूसरी चीज़ जो आपको पता होनी चाहिए, ये जो न्यूरल membrane होती है, the neural membrane, it has different types of ion channels. And you know, these ion channels are selectively permeable. Selectively permeable to different ions. ये नहीं कि एक ही आयन अंदर बाहर जाएगा. No, there is a permeability criteria and that is different for different ions. That's why it creates a potential difference. This creates potential difference. And this difference in the potential difference is responsible for the generation and conduction of the impulse. It's a very very important topic. बहुत interesting भी है और बहुत important भी है, बस आपको समझना है अच्छे से. Clear? First of all, we are talking about the resting membrane potential. Resting membrane potential means resting stage of the neuron. But basically, जब वो resting stage पे होता है, कोई conduction नहीं होती. There is no conduction of impulse takes place. That is what is known as the resting stage. Clear? So what happens there? First of all, no conduction of impulse. It's at a resting stage. That time, the membrane is more permeable to potassium ions than to sodium ions. Means potassium can move in but not sodium to that extent. Okay? And membrane is impermeable to the chloride ions and negatively charged proteins of exoplasm. Okay, so what happens, हमारे पास एक condition आ गई that membrane will be more permeable to potassium ions compared to sodium ions and membrane is completely impermeable to chlorides ions and negatively charged proteins of the exoplasm. So these ionic gradients across the membrane are maintained by the active transport of ions by a pump. और वो pump कौन सा होगा? सोडियम पोटेशियम एक्सचेंज पंप होगा. अब ये पंप क्या करेगा? This pump will transport 3 sodium outward and 2 potassium inward. Okay, so this sodium potassium exchange pump that is active there that time will help in net movement of 3 sodium outward and 2 potassium inward. Okay, it is more permeable to potassium ions. मतलब इसके बाहर तो पहले क्या पड़ा हुआ है? सारा पोटेशियम पड़ा हुआ है. Then compared to sodium. So वो क्या कर रहा है? It is releasing out the entire sodium outward and involving potassium inward. Alright, by doing that, the outer surface of the membrane, since what is coming out? 3 sodium are sent out. Membrane permeability है, not allowing all the potassiums to be in and all the sodiums to be out. So basically ये क्या करता है, एक channel create कर लेता है जिसके अंदर 3 sodium are thrown outward and 2 potassium are exchanged inward. And obviously related to that, the outer surface becomes positively charged and the inner one becomes negatively charged. ठीक है? And this is what is known as, when this kind of potential difference is generated, we call it the resting membrane potential. ये देखो, I'll draw it now. In this one, we have shown this pump here. पहले एक यहाँ पर we are going to show them the exchange pumps. Clear? So what is the polarity that time? That positive is outward and negative is inward. Which potential? Resting potential. This is the axon. ठीक है, ये वाला axon है, and we are talking about this region, that how will it appear? Clear? This is the outer membrane, that is this entire is the exoplasm. This is the outer membrane and this one is the inner membrane. And what did we talk about? When the ions here show that the membrane is maintained by the active transport of ions by these pumps. These are the sodium-potassium exchange pumps, where transport of 3 sodium will take place outward and 2 potassium inward, which will make the outer one positively charged and the inner one negatively charged. Clear? So the outer surface of the axonal will acquire a positive charge and the inner one will acquire a negatively charged. Why? Because the membrane of the neuron, this one, is more permeable to potassium ions compared to sodium ions, and the membrane is automatically impermeable to all the negatively charged proteins and chloride. They cannot move out when an action potential is generated. During the time of action potential means a stimulus has reached now. एक स्टिमुलस आ गया इसके ऊपर. These are the 3 pumps we are showing. We have received a stimulus. Clear? It is applied at the site of polarized membrane. This one, polarized one, which is at the resting stage. Now the membrane permeability at that site quickly change. What will it do? It will become freely permeable to sodium ions. Means the inside will now become positively charged. Initially the positive ones were widely spread on the outer side since the permeability did not allow. Now this will allow all the sodiums to move in. All the sodium ions will automatically move in. Alright, यहाँ से भी sodium अंदर जाएगा. So what will happen? The potential difference across the membrane at the site of stimulation is known as action potential. Whatever will be happening here in this area, इसको हम बोलेंगे action potential. Start हो गया ना? Because it has received threshold, that means the impulse here. Once it reaches here, at the site of stimulation, now the current flows through the exoplasm from the depolarized region to the next polarized region. ये तो depolarize होगी. What will happen now? As soon as the sodium will enter, तो automatically exchange हो गया. इसके पास वाले अंदर वाले so automatically positive हो जाएंगे and the polarity is reversed. Now this will be moving ऐसे. This polarity is reversing like this. Clear? Same is happening here. This one and this one. Inner one is, this one is still in a state of polarization. So automatically will show the same phenomena. That outer is positive, inner is negative, but this one got depolarized. Why? Because it has received the stimulus. So automatically it is showing that how the ions are changing their permeability. Clear? यहाँ से इधर जाएगा and automatically ये positive to negative. This is how the polarity is changing in a depolarized state. When the current flows through the exoplasm, through the depolarized state to the next polarized state or the region, through this fluid, this is the result of action potential. And we say action potential is generated now in the next segment, and this process continues all along the length of the nerve fiber. What do we think? When we receive a message from a polarized state, from a resting state, we get depolarized. Alright, will it remain like this forever? No. It's a very short term temporary change. Why? Because ऐसे नहीं होता कि हम एक ही impulse को throughout generate करते हैं हमारी lifetime में. We are looking at something that is also generation of an impulse, generation and conduction. We are touching an object, that is also generation and conduction of an impulse. We are listening to something, that is also generation and conduction of nerve impulse. It does not mean that it is permanent and fixed from polarized to depolarized. It means it keeps on passing from this depolarized state to next polarized state and continues until the threshold is received. When this will be stopped, automatically the entire message will reverses its polarized state. Once the threshold or the impulse, whatever is being received at this phase, stops. Once this stops, the entire process stops. Now, after this, what is happening? From here, it is moving further. This is a polarized state. This is now known as a depolarized state. How will it receive repolarization? In repolarization, at the site of stimulus. This is the site of stimulus. The stimulus induced permeability to sodium ions is very short-lived. Alright, these sodium ions that have entered in, these are very, very short-lived. This permeability, it has to get reversed. तो क्या होगा? It will quickly replaced by permeability to potassium ions. Alright, and when this happens, automatically the entire process reverses. वापस पोटेशियम आना, पॉजिटिव आना शुरू हो जाएगा और ये पॉजिटिव आगे फ्लो करेगा एंड नेगेटिव पीछे आ जाएगा. इट मीन्स ऊपर की तरफ as soon as the stimulus has reached here, the polarity is reversed because this polarity is a very short term polarity. It is very, very, very short lived, and this permeability to sodium ions will be reversed with the potassium ions, and at this stage the membrane is said to be polarized. Rather, we call it repolarized. That means the inside becomes negatively charged and the outside becomes positively charged once again. Okay, so this is how the entire message travels from a polarized to a depolarized state. This is generation and conduction of nerve impulse, which is taken up as together. Clear?